Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live, where we're going to talk about some of the key areas we think that CMOs should be focusing on as the year unfolds into 2024 and beyond. It's been an interesting time in the marketing space, so hopefully we've got some interesting insights. I'm David Rickard, I'm partner here at Everest Group, and I lead the work on marketing services as well as trust and safety and customer experience management. I'm joined by Nishant, who's a practice director in the team, and Mustafa, who's a senior analyst. So I've brought the experts because I like to be surrounded by people who know what they're doing versus myself, who I can talk a good game, but I like to have people who really know this space. So thank you for joining us today. One of the things I'd first asked the group to do before we get into it is, if you're listening to us, wherever you are in the world, it's really interesting for us to know where you are, just so we get a sense of how global the audience is. We can sometimes then use regional examples if we see we've got a lot of people from India or the US or the UK. So if you wouldn't mind just indulging me with a little bit and just putting where you're listening to or watching from in the comment section, and then we'll get into the detail pretty soon. But yeah, if you could just put some comments in about where you're watching from. I would also say, as you're doing that, if you have any questions throughout the presentation or discussion that we're having, please put them in the comment section. I love to take questions as we go because I think that actually makes it much more interactive, and we really want to make these sessions much more interactive. So please feel free to put any comments you have, and if I can throw them at Mustafa or Nishant to maybe fox them a little bit, I'll also do that, because that's always good fun. So yeah, please let me know where you're listening in from. That would be great, and then we'll get started. So if we do think about let's getting started, I think that if we move to the first slide that we've got, I'm just going to start with a question. The question was, or statement really. So the statement that the team are making is that 2023 wasn't as bad as expected. So Nishant, depending on your context and your outlook, I guess, we're saying 2023 wasn't as bad as expected. That's a pretty bold statement. Can you explain a little bit more? What do we mean 2023 wasn't as bad as expected?
Well, honestly, I think 2023 was a year of doom and gloom when it comes to the marketing ecosystem. I think everyone considered a lot of the budgets to be pulled back. And overall, I think the growth was expected to be extremely muted, if not probably none whatsoever. However, when we looked at the overall outsourced marketing services space, what we saw was, well, I wouldn't say no growth. I would say it's a decent amount of growth, as you can see in the graph in front of you. But what I would want to actually call out is that's an enviable growth for almost any sector out there. 14 to 18% is something that almost no industry sees on an annual basis. And this is a slow year. So while 2023 was one of those years wherein a lot of budgets got frozen, people kind of spent a lot lesser in the first half of the year, we saw the second half speed up quite a bit, and growth continuing to emerge from a lot of different pockets in the year itself.
Okay, thank you. And so just thank you for those who've already also put in some comments where you're from. We've got 3 people listening in from the US, Tennessee, Connecticut, and Buffalo, New York. I'm sure that hopefully there's other people from other locations, so please throw that in. But so linking to locations, so we talked about the growth. Are there any specific geographies that are either driving or pulling the rest of the market down? What are we seeing from a geo perspective? Again, as I said, we got 3 people who've commented from the US, but what are we seeing from a market perspective?
Well, when we actually look at the overall geo split, a lot of it is actually sitting out of the United States. And the fact that the United States in itself grew was probably what actually pulled the market upwards. So maybe around 55-56% of the market is in the US, and that seemed to grow at about 18 to 25% at this point of time. When it comes to the other sub-segments of the market, the other area of growth that we noticed was APAC, which is again a sizable part of the market. LATAM, the Middle East, etc., also saw significant growth. Whereas when it comes to something like continental Europe, for instance, I think that's the market that actually brought the growth down quite a bit. A lot of markets in that space had very strong recessionary concerns, because of which we saw maybe single-digit growth from most of them, if at all, and that continued to bring us backwards at this point of time. UK has been seeing a slower growth curve in the recent times. However, when we talk about the way forward, we're expecting this to to strengthen a little bit, but not by a very significant amount, if at all.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, and I mean it's interesting from a geo perspective, but if we think about then, let's think about 2024 now. So why do we think 2024 is going to be different? What's the indicators, or why are we sitting here saying 2024 is going to be different?
Well, when we actually talk about 2024, I think the year started off a lot more aggressively for a lot of players in the market. We are seeing a lot more deal activity as of this point of time. But what differentiates 2024 to a lot of the other years that we've seen right now is uh, the different reasons for why people should be spending. So first off, we have a lot of different global events coming together. Be it the music industry, be it sports, etc. We're seeing events everything from the Paris Olympics to Copa America to Tour de France, etc. And we're also seeing a huge number of female sport events also starting to gain a lot of traction over the last few years. So there are a lot of spending opportunities where marketeers would actually want to reach the very focused audience that they are looking for as of this point of time. On the other side of the conversation, we have a new spending group that's probably turning up. Think about it. 50% of the world kind of goes into its electoral booths this year. So with 50% of the world going in from India to the US, Mexico, United Kingdom, South Africa, Indonesia, etc., there's a brand new set of customers that we're targeting. Governments slash political parties are increasing their amount of spending as well, creating a lot of different kinds of events where other brands would also want to start engaging with their customers. And overall, the market is fairly more optimistic in comparison to what it was in 2023. Irrespective of whatever the macroeconomic conditions said, positive or negative in 2023, I think there was a lot of negative sentiment in the market. However, when we flip that over to 2024, everyone is either cautiously optimistic or optimistic about how the year is going to shape up. So I think that's what distinguishes 2024 as a year in comparison to previous years.
Okay, so just playing that back then. So really, because some of the key drivers are the major sporting events, such as the Olympics, etc. A number of different sporting events. Some of them targeted at females, some at males, some both. So I guess they drive different audiences and different marketing approaches. And then the elections that we're seeing a large proportion across the globe. I mean, I know in the UK, where I'm based, we've got ours coming up hopefully at some point this year. We shouldn't get into politics, but I think we're desperate for an election here in the UK. And I think that we're seeing that we definitely know the one in the US is happening, India, etc. So that's what's going to be driving it. And we see that being one of the big sort of contributors to a positive 2024 from a marketing services perspective, which is
Yes.
always important to clarify. Okay. So as we think about 2024, though, there's going to be some clear winners in the channel race. We talk about that, but that, I mean, for people who maybe not necessarily are in this space all the time, when we talk about the channel race, Mustafa, can you just maybe explain what does that mean? And again, before you do that, just to um, prompt the audience again, if you've got any questions, please feel free to throw that in to the comment section. But also, if you could comment where you're based from as well, that will also give us a sense of the global audience. But also, if you've got any questions. But yeah, Mustafa, what do we mean by the winners in the channel race? It's not swimming the channel, I assume. So help the audience understand a little bit about what we mean by channel race.
Definitely not swimming the channel, David. But again, that's a very interesting question in context of marketeers, and that's probably one of the questions that marketeers across the globe are asking, because in 2024 we have a plethora of channels that is available to marketeers. Marketeers are spoiled by choices that channels have to offer them, right? While some channels are growing faster as compared to the others, as you can see on the screen, right? But most of these channels are growing. And the second important thing to call out here when we talk about channels is the capabilities that these channels have to offer. more targeted ads, real-time measurement of customer engagement, the kind of access to first-party data, right? That is also being advanced with the influx of all the new technologies in the space of AI, ML, NLP that we are seeing. So yeah, today's marketeers have a wide array of channels to choose from, but marketing budgets are limited, right? So that is where marketeers need to prioritize on which channels they need to focus more on, and which channels they can be table stakes for them, and which ones to ignore, right? Basis their specific objectives, their specific engagement goals. So I think that is something that will play a huge role in 2024 for marketers.
Okay, so help us or help the marketers listening. How do we think they should pick the channels, the right ones for their company? I mean, I'm sure it's not just a case of finger in the air, pick whatever one sounds best. How should we be helping? I mean, we always want to help our audience and our members in terms of making intelligent decisions. So how should they be thinking about these channels?
So, I mean, basically, channels can be looked from two lenses. One is the growth potential. What is the kind of ad spend that the channel is garnering from around all the advertisers? And second is consumer relevance. How relevant is that channel in the current market? So, if we plot all the major channels available to marketeers on this 2 by 2, we have three major cohorts that are emerging. First one is established channels, right? So these are the channels which have grown at a double digit pace over the last decade, right? And now are more or less like table stake for all marketeers out there. Again, these are channels like SEO, email marketing, social video marketing, which we have been seeing over the past 1 decade. Others are the niche channels. So again, this is a very interesting space because these are channels which allow marketeers to target select consumer cohorts, and also are focus areas for select industries in the advertising space. So let me take an example of a metaverse or in-game advertising. The kind of consumers marketeers would be able to reach through these channels will be very, very niche, right? But for certain specific industries, they might be very relevant and very targeted, right? So again, this is more of a industry specific, consumer specific play. And then we come to the mainstream platforms of the future. So these are in our perspective, these are the areas that are going to drive growth for marketeers going ahead. These are the channels that will add the real value for marketeers in terms of increasing engagement, meeting the customers where they are, and creating more personalized form of engagement for their customers. So as you can see, I mean, retail media, CTV, social commerce, and channels like digital audio advertisement are some of the ones we would recommend marketeers to prioritize in the current scenario.
Okay, thanks, Mustafa. And yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because you think about metaverse as probably the big hype 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and then Gen AI came in, and it's the first mention of Gen AI after 13 minutes, so we're doing well. But if you're joining thinking about Gen AI, we'll definitely be covering that before we finish this webinar. So no, if we can go back, if we can take that slide down, that would be great. But if we think about the metaverse, it was considered to be the big hype, and then Gen AI came in. But if we think about that's very relevant to some audiences, but not others. But when you look at those mainstream areas and the ones that we're quite bullish on, we're talking about, I mean, you talked about sort of retail media segment. So why are we so bullish on retail media segment? I mean, we put that up there as being high relevance and also high growth potential. So why are we so bullish on that?
So again, if I talk about retail media, it has been one of the fastest growing channels across major geographies for the last 2-3 years. And it is expected to drive almost a quarter of ad spending in the US in the next year. Yeah. And what are the factors that will further fuel the growth of retail media going ahead? Number one is the ad inventory. Right. So traditionally, retail media has been offering more bottom of the funnel ad inventory to marketers. But now we see these retail media networks offering more mid-funnel as well as upper funnel ad inventory, allowing advertisers to have a complete funnel solution and drive engagement from the entire awareness to decision making to purchase journey for their clients. Again, one more major reason that will drive growth for retail media is partnerships. So one of the things that we see is these retail media networks are increasingly partnering with social media companies. And just to quote one instance of it, last year, Amazon partnered with Facebook and Instagram to drive social commerce on those platforms, to drive more in-app purchases, more data exchange between these platforms. So I think those are the kind of activities that drive synergies among these channels, that is retail media and social commerce. So yeah, I mean, for retail media, these two are the major reasons. And just one last point when we come to retail media is we also see retail media evolving into something bigger that the market is terming as commerce media. Now, what is commerce media? So the data that backs and fuels retail media is the bloodline of retail media, and that data can be leveraged across all other channels. So now marketers are leveraging this data from retail media across various channels to drive higher level of engagement. And uh, in the scenario where the third party cookies demise is slated for this year or sometime next year, I think this first party data coming from retail media will play a huge role for channel strategy across channels for marketers.
Yeah, no, interesting landscape, isn't it, with the third-party cookie demise? So, be interesting to see how this market plays out. So, the other area that you had sort of called out in there in terms of some of the focus for marketeers would be around the connected TV. So, what's driving that then? Why again do we think that's an area that people should be investigating or putting their time and effort into?
So connected TV again is a very interesting space. Last year, it was the fastest growing channel in US. Also known as fast channels. So connected TV, there are multiple reasons why connected TV is growing. First one is increased adoption. So the time, let me throw a statistic over there. The time spent on connected TV is almost double as compared to laptop or desktop devices in the US currently, and it is the second after mobile, and it is narrowing the gap with mobile also very rapidly. So that is number one, right? Number two, connected TV offers more personalization as compared to linear TV. It offers more targeted advertising. It offers access to verified and authenticated data, because most of the accounts on these connected TV platforms are verified, right? Third is increased inventory. So currently, if I talk about connected TV, there are certain platforms such as YouTube, Hulu, who are the leading platforms offering ad inventory for connected TV. But we see the likes of Amazon, Disney, Netflix offering ad tiered options in their subscription model, right? And that is something that will fuel the growth for connected TV. And the final point, I think, as Nishant mentioned, we have a lot of sporting events, live sporting events coming in. And over the past few years, uh, most of these platform providers have made huge investments in their platforms in order to provide a high quality and a brand safe space for live streaming of sports. And that is what will reap results for them this year with the Paris Olympics or the UEFA Europe Cup coming in this year, right? So I think those are the major factors which are working out for connected TV in this landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting, connected TV, because I'm incredibly old, as you know, but I mean, I probably spend half as much time on connected TV now as I would do on traditional TV. And I know that my children, who are not children anymore, they're 20 and 22, but they probably don't ever watch traditional television or as we would have done many years ago. So it's an interesting space. I just want to make an offer to the audience. So firstly, again, please let us know if you've got any questions. We're also offering a complimentary report, which is looking at loyalty services. So if you've got an interest in loyalty services, it's a report we've only just recently released. And if you're interested in getting access to a complimentary copy of that report, then there will be a link you can follow in the comment section. So please press on that and we'll follow up and give you a copy of that report. So I want to put that out there. If people are interested in getting a copy of our report, then please press on that link. And as I said, if you've got any questions, then please also drop them in the chat and we'll get to those as we go. So the last one, just coming up to the last one on the recommendations, we talked about digital audio as a recommendation, but that's low growth and low relevance. So why would we be recommending that? It almost feels contrary to or contradictory to what we've been saying if it's all about high relevance and high importance. So why are we saying digital audio?
So digital audio is an interesting one for me, especially. As you said, low growth in terms of ad spend. Yes, currently because digital audio is a space that is yet the entire monetization story is yet to get structured in that space. Also, the players in the space are very niche. But if I talk about adoption, right? So digital audio advertisement currently is like half of overall audio space in all the major markets, and it is rising. And also the second point is the kind of customer stickiness across these platforms is very high. So some of the leading platforms in terms of digital audio advertisement are the likes of Spotify or Pandora. But a lot of newer platforms are also leveraging this space and trying to monetize it, right? So once the monetization game comes in, this would be an interesting space. Now, the second point here is there were certain barriers when it came to digital audio advertisement. As in, digital audio advertisement majorly had a more top of the funnel availability in terms of ad inventory. The ads were not easily interactable, or you could not take action on those ads, right? But with the advent of technology that is changing rapidly, a lot of these platforms are experimenting with interactable ads, where through your devices, through your home devices, through your phones, through your infotainment devices in your cars, audiences can interact with ads that they listen to on these platforms, and generative AI as well as NLP is playing a big role in bringing this to life. There are some big brands such as Sephora who are experimenting actively with these kind of advertisements. So I think those kind of technological innovations are something that will help this channel grow. And final point is personalization. So programmatic, while has been widely adopted across platforms, in audio, the adoption of programmatic has been lower as compared to others, and which is rapidly growing. And also, the kind of personalization that was there in ads was not so relevant in audio. But current technologies, especially generative AI, is bringing in a lot of personalization to the ads you get on these platforms. So I think these broadly are the factors which will drive growth in this space. But yeah, seems like a super interesting channel to track, and here at Everest we are closely tracking all of these four channels as we go ahead.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mustafa. And yeah, I mean, I guess when you think about digital audio, many people's minds will go to traditional old school digital audio and the type of ads that we're used to. But interesting to see how that's developing with the advent of generative AI. And so that leads us nicely into the next question, really, which is, so everyone talks about Gen AI. It's a conversation that we have a lot at Everest Group. We get a lot of questions from our audience about generative AI and the impact on any market you look at. Everyone wants to know about what the impact of generative AI is going to be. So when we think about it from a marketing perspective, Nishant, what do we think what's the current maturity of that conversation today? I mean, as I said, 2 years ago, people hadn't really heard of generative AI. We know AI has been around a long, long time. But when we think about it from a marketing perspective, what's the maturity level from a Gen AI perspective?
Thanks, David. And kudos to yourself and Mustafa for actually keeping the Gen AI topic up for about 15 minutes out into the call. But recently, we did a study across a lot of different service providers, both via primary and secondary analysis. And what we realized is we're probably a little over 50% in terms of the number of different pilot versus production use cases that we're seeing in the market right now. So, if we compare it to a lot of the other industries, marketing is still fairly ahead a lot of different segments of the market. But in terms of overall maturity, we're still going to see a lot of growth come into this conversation.
Yeah, so you said more than 50% really. So that means that does that mean we're seeing a transformed marketing ecosystem where we're using the best of AI? Because we look at a lot of different areas. I mean, other areas that I've got in my portfolio, which is customer experience management or trust and safety, we may not be at that 50%. So are you saying marketing's ahead, and are we expecting to see the best of AI being used for marketing moving forward?
Well, I think the conversation for a lot of different industries is fairly straightforward, but when we talk about marketing, the conversation gets a lot more nuanced. So when we look at this graphic, what we're talking about is how many use cases are in pilot, how many use cases are in production. But what we're also not talking about is probably what is the pipeline of future conversations that we're going to see in this space. Realize that marketing is fairly more mature when it comes to the automation game. Um, so so when we talk about, say, all of the marketing activities today, maybe 60, 70% of them are already automated. If I talked about, say, programmatic advertisements, that's about 70% of the market today. So we're seeing really large numbers in terms of what automation is already done in the marketing ecosystem. So for this to be a transformative technology in the marketing ecosystem, the stakes need to be a lot higher. It needs to be able to do a lot more in comparison to what it is doing today. So while we're seeing a lot of adoption across B2B and B2C players in the market today, we're seeing a lot of different use cases emerge, especially in the content side. What we also really need to analyze or think about, and since the audience today is a CMO, a CMO needs to start turning around and questioning whether the use case that they're looking at in the market, being piloted in the generative AI space, is better than something that they already have from a regular, old AI solution, and try weighing the pros and the cons, because it's not an incremental change in the marketing ecosystem. This has to be an exponential step for it to start making a mark. Because when it comes to incremental changes, marketing's been in flux for a while now. We've seen a lot of different platforms get implemented. We've seen a lot of different technologies come to the forefront. For generative AI to start making that much of a mark across all of the marketing ecosystem, the threshold needs to be a lot higher. And again, I'm calling that out very specifically because we know that generative AI has significant implications on the content creation side of the conversation. But when we talk about the larger conversation, when we go out and say, does it impact, say, campaign management or media buying and selling? Majority of these processes are already automated. So the bar needs to be a little higher.
Yeah, because I think what I find really interesting on this type of topic is that there's often technology and new technologies get hyped, as we know, and then it almost becomes a case of I've got this technology now, let me find a problem to solve it with. But what I
Yeah.
really like to try and do, and as we've talked about previously, is let's focus on what the business problems are. What are CMOs who are maybe listening to this? What are the business outcomes they're trying to achieve, and how does the technology help that versus here's some technology, what can we do with it? So have you got a view in terms of, okay, what are some of the business outcomes that we feel this technology is going to be able to help with versus we've got some technology, what can we do with it? Maybe share some light on that.
Sure. So we've got a list of maybe a non-exhaustive list of a lot of the use cases that we've already started seeing in different levels of implementation today. So of course, the conversation is going to evolve quite drastically. So what I would actually want to focus back on to is, again, say something like content, wherein we're seeing content creation at scale, which used to be a very, very manpower-driven conversation, but now is starting to see a significant amount of automation in that space. Similarly, content localization, personalization. But if you think about this conversation, what's interesting about it is like you mentioned, everyone gets hyped up with a lot of different technologies, but let's just take the Gen AI conversation where it stands today. It's a technology that requires no special hardware. It requires no special coding language, uh, and more importantly, a lot of the capabilities that we're seeing are getting platformized extremely quickly. So for anyone who was say in the content creation side, who was a graphic designer, he slash she has a lot of these tools and capabilities at their fingertips already. So it starts flowing into their work today very very easily. Similarly, a lot of different channels, like Mustafa spoke about SEO, etc., where we're spending a lot of money on a day-to-day basis across different enterprises. The ability to make this a more efficient conversation, to be more dynamic, to be something that gets refreshed a lot more often than what a human could do, is something that these platforms offer. Now, in a lot of the other cases, like I mentioned, you may already have a different platform out there, but maybe in something like content, we're not seeing that to be the use case. So a lot of use cases are going to continue to emerge. What we believe is that a lot of the strategic elements are going to start flowing into the generative AI conversation. You're going to start seeing, say, dynamic customer segmentation. You're going to start seeing um, dynamic persona identification. You're going to start looking at a lot of predictive analytics coming up from these platforms. Again, is it better than the platforms out there? We'll have to wait and watch. But a lot of these conversations are going to start coming to the forefront with generative AI in the near to medium term. One of the other topics that we all spoke about a while back is actually very interesting here as well. So when we talk about the death of the third-party cookie and the fact that that might happen this year, it might happen next year. We don't know when that's actually going to happen. The deadline's been pushed a few times already. I think one of the questions that keep coming up for us specifically is how does that go into the generative AI conversation today? Because to some extent, it looks like, hey, there's a democratization of information. Everyone now has the same amount of information. Um, to be honest, that's not really the case. The way we've always looked at it is the game changing technologies of tomorrow are going to require a very different data set that's more customized, that's more personalized, that's more enterprise specific. So a lot of the technology that companies have set up today to be able to collect that first party, zero party data and put it together is going to start becoming a differentiator in the near to medium term as we start looking at models that are built very specifically to those use cases. So I think that's where this conversation is going to evolve. And a lot of your enterprise problems of tomorrow are things that we're not even experimenting today because we've all been given a new flashy toy and we start playing around with all of its features. But I think there's a second or a third order of conversation, especially in the marketing conversation, that we just haven't reached. And the reason for that is very clear. For someone, say, not throwing rocks, but in the human resources space, if ChatGPT could create, say, a first draft of a job application of a job description, that's transformative. For marketing, that's still incremental because a lot of the other platforms have been doing, say, 90% of the work till there, maybe 80% of the work till there. So the bar is way, way higher than where we are today.
Yeah, thanks, Nishad. And I think that that's the thing where we need to move forward with any of these discussions, which is so it's not just about what the technology does, but it's also about what's the ultimate business problem. So I think that what we hear when we talk to a lot of enterprises, when they're thinking about investing, yes, there's been short-term pressure to do something with Gen AI. But actually, when we talk to both service providers working in this space, but also the buyers in this space, they're now trying to get to that point of, okay, but what is the business problem they're solving? So I think that's where we need to get to, which is it improving efficiency? But what problem does that solve? So I think that's the thing we challenge ourselves on thinking about as well, which is what are the real business problems this technology can solve versus, yes, it can do a lot of great things. But I think that's an evolving discussion as we see more and more of this technology. So we always aim to make these last about 30 minutes unless there's a lot of questions, and I haven't seen any questions yet, so give the audience a minute or so. If you've got any burning questions, please let us know. I'd also direct your attention back to the complimentary copy of the report, which is called Pledging Allegiance to the Modern Consumer, decoding modern loyalty programs. So quite a deep title, but really it's talking about what we're seeing in the loyalty program space. So if you've got interest in that area, then please click on the link to get access to it. But if you've got no other questions, or there are no questions from the audience, I would just leave it to Mustafa and Nishant. Have you got any closing comments? If we've got CMOs listening to this, any thoughts or any words of wisdom that you might want to leave the audience with before we call it a day?
Well, I think a lot of these conversations will start getting a lot more customized. I think there is a lot to explore across each one of these enterprises, and I know budgets are becoming a little harder to come by. So I think there is a lot of exploration left in the marketing ecosystem, and if to be a little shameless, if you think that there's an opportunity that um, this is going to be transformative in the near to medium term, we'd love to hear from you as well. But 2024 is going to be an exciting year, and 2026 is going to be transformative from where we stand today.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending. If you've got any questions, then our contact details are available. We'd love to help you with any detailed insights or questions you have on what we presented. Or when you see the report, if you've got questions and you want to follow up, then again, please reach out to us. But thank you for attending today. And we look forward to seeing you on the next time. And if you've ever got any topics you would like us to cover in this type of event, then again, please feel free to provide us that feedback. We always want to make content that we know people are interested in listening to. So, but thank you for your time.